Hello everyone, my name is Brendan Carlson from your guys' CDIS speech class. Today I'm going to be doing a speech on like the rising costs of tuition and why it's getting too high and kind of like the negative effects of that. So right away, being a student myself and knowing most people who are watching this are as well, on how stressful and anxiety ridden it is going to college and wondering at the end of all this like how we're going to pay this money back. It's one of the biggest and scariest things about going to college, and personally that's one of the most things I worry about every single day while taking these courses here. But I think to myself all the time, like, is it worth it or not to be going here right now? And then all the time I think it's not worth it. All the debt, the stress, but I do take a chance myself. I roll the dice to bet on my future and on myself. I want to be successful, and I'm sure you guys do too. It's kind of why we're all here. But there's ups and downs to college, and one of the biggest downs is the debt and rising debt of going to university. I think right now either college debt needs to lower, or in the future lower, because if it keeps rising like this, I just don't think people are going to be wanting to be going to university or think it's going to be worth it in the future. People are worried right now about, if they're in the major right now, if once they graduate, if they're really going to get a job in that field of study. It's kind of a big concern. And then also if they're going to make enough when they get out. That's also another huge worry people have going on. And I definitely worry about that all the time. It's very stressful. It's hard to focus on, your schoolwork because you have to have a job as well. Most of the people I do know have a job around here while going to classes, and that's very hard to do. You got to try to manage your work life, your student life, your social life, time for family. Like, it is very difficult, and to have all this debt on over your head to be having it paid back, it can be very, very difficult with how much debt is going on. Now I want to get into like some very specific examples of like the negative effects of all this student debt. I think these are some examples that most people don't think of right away or are in like the biggest topic of discussion right off the bat when you go into this. So I kind of just wanted to bring these up. So the first example is the delay of people getting married. This is kind of an odd one, but it's one of the ones that people have really taken notice to. It's been kind of affected over the past decade. Our culture has definitely changed. People are getting married less and older, and one of the biggest reasons is because of costs of going to tuition, and people are in college because people when they have all this debt, they don't want to share that debt with someone else. They want to pay at least some of it or most of it off before they go and be with this person forever and share each other's debt. So people do worry about that, and so right now it's just a little delayed compared to how it was back then. And kind of the reason of that is college debt is one of the reasons. A second surprising kind of negative effect is the difficulty of buying a home. Now you might think of that as like, oh yeah, like obviously the cost, but people usually like to start saving money before making a big purchase, any big purchase. They like to save some money up first and then try to buy, whatever they're going to go and buy. And buying a home is one of the biggest purchases a person makes in their lifetime. So it's very difficult to try and buy a home when you have to be paying back this debt and have all of this debt over your head. So it's very difficult to do that. Most people nowadays are going out and renting or living with their parents actually for a few years after they get out of college just to save up some money, pay off their debt, and in order to do that you have to delay everything. You have to delay buying a house, delay getting married, delay having kids. So just because of this debt, it's kind of delaying the process of everything else. And so then that leads us into the delaying of having kids. So people obviously want to save some money before they have kids so they can be financially stable. And so people are having less kids, and they're also doing it later in life. But one of the biggest negative effects of this is right now in our generation, and kind of like where we are right now, when we have kids, and it matters on, obviously how much money we're going to be making, which you never know. But most of us in this generation and where we're at, we're going to be sitting at a point in our lives where we can't really save money for our kids to go to college. And so then when our kids get out of high school and want to go to college, they are also going to have to take out huge amounts of debt, loans, and then they're going to have debt. And then when they have kids, it's just a never-ending cycle of all the kids and everyone having to pay back their loans. And so it's a very big struggle right now, and I don't know how it's going to change. I don't know how it's going to improve on how to get everyone out of this never-ending cycle of us having to keep paying back this debt forever, and then our kids having to pay back this debt and their kids, and because no one can save any money to try to get us out of this debt, because we're paying back all the debt we've already owned. But also, next thing I noticed is like a big affected amount of low income families. So they kind of see it as impossible almost, because they don't want to have the big looming debt over their head. Like for low income families, it's hard enough for them on the day-to-day basis just to cover their daily bills. So the thought of the loans is very scary to them. It seems impossible to pay back. But there's many ways, obviously, in like universities and the government helps them with paying that. But a lot of times it's just the fact of having to pay something back, and obviously having no money to begin with to even do that, where it's just almost an impossible thing to even think about or go into. So, I think that affects many people, because low-income families, that's one of the most like populated families around. So it's very difficult, and yeah, the universities and government is getting better, but it's slow. And then with the rising cost of tuition, it's just getting kind of harder and harder. Another thing is like 19% in the past 10 years. It's only a 19% graduation rate in the 4 years. So students think all the time when they're going to school that all of a sudden they're a little bit behind, they're a semester or two behind, maybe 2 years behind, and they start freaking out and they drop out because they're not going to graduate in the 4 years. Because all we've heard for our whole life is, you're supposed to graduate in 4 years, 4 years, 4 years. It's not 4 years. That's not the average anymore, and they need to change how people look and view it all, because us as students are getting too stressed out. Everyone. I'm a little bit behind. I'm gonna be like 5-6 year, and that's okay. But some other students, they freak out, they drop out, and then they have all the student debt from the 3 years that they've already been here. And so it gets to be very scary for them. So I think people need to change the views on that and kind of figure out really that it's going to be 5 to 6 years instead of the 4. We have to take a lot more classes nowadays, which also increases the debt and how much we're really paying for. Graduate in the 5-6 years. College students are earning a lot less each year when they get out, while the debt is increasing. So when we get out of college, we're earning actually quite less than if, when our parents went to school and graduated. We are going to be earning less, while the tuition rates and student loans are actually higher. So it's hard to pay for, and it's kind of another very stressful thing to look at. But one thing to kind of realize why it's getting so high is the Department of Education. They run it like a business. They make about $15 billion in profits each year just on us college students going in and taking out student loans. They are, like I said, a business. They are trying to attract students just like a business is trying to attract customers. So they are trying to figure that out, and I think If if everyone all of a sudden stopped going to college, just didn't pay for it, which I think might happen soon, if people start to realize this, it might not be worth it, then the whole economy might crash. But I doubt that's going to happen. I just hope tuition rates lower, and hopefully it gets better for us. But thank you guys so much. Have a nice day.